why we need to vote for the United National Party. 5-point promises that we've given with regards to growing the economy is our #1 priority, and fighting corruption, it would be #2 priority. I suppose, they are all equal and in power. Ensuring freedom for all, because we strongly believe that we are a nation which is multinational, multicultural and multi-religious. Investing in infrastructure, proper infrastructure that would give dividends to enable a proper economic growth, and to improve on the education system. I think education to me is the key if we are to move forward. No country can be developed unless we or a government would invest in human capital, and that's, I think, should be top priority. Because to me, we are a tiny island with only 20 million people, 25 million people. We are a nation that has so many resources, which we haven't actually tapped into, and I would say our biggest resource is our human resource. But have we invested in the right places in the past? We're still a commodity exporter. We are not even a smart Sri Lanka. But Sri Lanka could be a smart Sri Lanka, and we have promised, when we talk about growing the economy, we talk about a knowledge-based economy, and to create the right infrastructure, the mechanisms to move towards a knowledge economy, and I think that is top priority. The manifesto also promises 45 industrial zones, economic zones, and 11 industrial zones, which I'm sure all of you would be happy to hear about. I am really not very I would say that I'm quite happy that we are talking about 11 industrial zones and 45 economic development zones, because this is going to enable women to strengthen their economy. Because in a post-war situation, I strongly believe it is always the women who are deprived of their basic rights during a war and even after a war. So in this post-war situation, if you look at the population, the women have had a very raw deal. Sri Lanka hasn't moved anywhere since 1994, when the United National Party left and went into the opposition. Of course, we were back just for a very short span of time, 2 years, and I strongly believe in these 2 years, what we did to improve the economy and what we did to create the platform for the former president to fight the war was something that people do not acknowledge or recognize. When we came into power in 2001, we were in dire straits. The LTT was quite strong. They had basically attacked the oil tanks to the Bandaranaike International Airport. They were in the habit of just coming in little planes and bombing the city and going back. They had bombed the central bank, and we were in a minus growth rate in 2001 when the Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe took on the government, and as the Prime Minister, of course, in an executive system, the Prime Minister has very little powers to do what he needs to do. Of course, the system has changed now because of the 19th Amendment that has come into being. And during that time, Mr. Wickremesinghe realized minus growth rate, we were not going anywhere, we were in debt to the whole world as far as the war was concerned. And I think he was smart enough during that time to realize LTT, which was a deadly terrorist group in the world at that time, in the early, in the millennium, at the beginning of the millennium, he realized if we are to eradicate terrorism, we need to eradicate terrorism. Of course, when we talk about the LTT has to be eliminated in 3 different forms. One, we could defeat them militarily on the ground, defeat them internationally, and defeat them politically. So Mr. Wickremesinghe used a tactic to defeat them internationally and politically. So what he did was he gave a short interim ceasefire period so that he could muster the international community to support him to defeat them politically and internationally. And I think that paid dividends beyond expectations, which this nation do not want to recognize or acknowledge. If what he did during that short span of time was not done, I don't think we could have defeated them militarily on the ground. What Mr. Wickremesinghe did was during the ceasefire, he of course signed the ceasefire agreement. Then he mustered the international community to support him. I remember, because I was High Commissioner in Malaysia, when the donor conference was called in Japan, where the donor conference pledged 3.5 billion US dollars to Sri Lanka. Whilst doing that, whilst having the ceasefire agreement, Mr. Wickremesinghe was able to get support from the US. We got the US warship. Without the warship, we wouldn't have been able to win the war. That was number one. I must give credit to Mr. Milinda Morogoda. He had a lot of support from the US for us. We also got provision from the US government to demine the north. So we did a lot of demining as well with the support of the United Nations. Then Mr. Wickremesinghe signed an agreement with India called the Supplyment of Arms Agreement, which enabled us to send, because our forces were in dire straits at the time. We had no strength, we didn't have the ammunition to fight the LTT at that time. We were bankrupt as a country. So he tactically, when he signed this agreement with India, and managed to send our forces for training as well. There was this bilaterals with regards to training our forces. If you look at the 50th anniversary of the, I don't know if it was 50th or 60th anniversary of the Army, they produced a book. In this book, the Army talks about one leader in this country who did immense work to enable the Army to be strong at a particular point. I think in that book, page 500, 501, 502, 3, 4, 5 pages after the founder father of the nation, D.S. Senanayake, if there was somebody that was mentioned in this book of the history of the Sri Lankan army, that a leader had contributed to strengthening the army, was Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe. I think all of you need to take that book and have a look. We don't talk about it. I strongly believe that the United National Party doesn't market itself properly, and we do not brag about what we have done, and that is one of our weak points. We need to talk about what we did. We need to take credit for the war. If you listen to Karunaman's interviews, whilst he was being the deputy chairman of the SLFP, whilst being a top cabinet minister of the past regime, he's given many interviews, and he has said, Mahinda Rajapaksa wouldn't have been able to win the war if not for Mr. Wickremesinghe's ceasefire agreement. Because Karunaman was one of the deadliest terrorists, and he was the LTT's army captain, was Karunaman. And he was one person who opposed the ceasefire agreement. He was one person who didn't want to go into the agreement because he knew that the LTT could be demoralized, de-strengthened, and defeated. And that's exactly what happened with the ceasefire agreement. As much as, Mr. Wickremesinghe was, using his tactics to get the international community to support him, demoralize the LTT, and that was mentioned many times later on. And also during that short span of time, a minus growth rate was in 2 years, within a short span of 2 years, went up to 5.8, and we were able to pay all the war debts. We were in debt to quite a number of countries, and we created a very conducive platform for the war to be won in 2005. 2005, was one of the most crucial times and a crucial presidential election where everybody, the whole country, felt that the United National Party was going to win and Mr. Wickremesinghe was going to win. And an unfortunate incident took place where the North and the East was not allowed to vote. And we all know why, and this case is going to come up very soon, and I'm sure we know exactly what happened there. Because on the 16th of November 2005 was the presidential elections. On the 26th of November 2005, Vedupilli Prabhakaran, on their National Heroes Day, makes a statement. And in this statement he says, I defeated Ranil Wickremesinghe because he's a cunning fox. He is the one person, I mean this is in the Tamil, anyone can read it, listen to it, hear it and get your transcripts and know exactly what it is. I'm just giving you the gist of it. He said that I defeated him because he is the one who demoralized the LTT. And we are in this state because by that time Karunaman, Pillayan, Mangala Master, the East was broken away. 8,000 card had already come out of the LTT, which eventually this 8,000 card joined the SLFP together with Mr. Karunaman, and he became the deputy chairman of the SLFP. So this speech people need to listen to or hear. People need to know that because there is this fear, now this is a fear psychosis that is being brought back again in this election, trying to say, you know, LTT is going to raise its head, we're going to divide the country. There is no way. I think if there's one patriotic person who truly loves this country and who did everything to create the platform to eradicate LTT, it is none other than the Prime Minister, the Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe. He loves this nation. He's a true patriot. And people would love to distort his vision, his personality, and his work that he's doing for this nation. I think there is no one at this point of time who could take this country out of where we are other than him. That's just to tell you exactly why we need to vote UMP, but we need to vote UMP because I think in the history of Sri Lankan politics, no government had delivered what we had delivered in the 100 days. One has to understand this 100-day government was brought in only to serve the purpose of the 100 promises we had given. That was the pledge that His Excellency the President, Maithripala Sirisena, made on every platform during the presidential election, saying that he had his vision and his manifesto, and then he had this 100-day program saying that when he's elected on the 8th of January, he's going to take 100 days to do some immediate quick fixing. One was he wanted to abolish the 18th Amendment and bring in the 19th Amendment because that was one of the promises he made, that he was going to basically abolish the executive, not totally abolish the executive presidency, but to devolve some of the powers to Parliament. And he was very sincere in what he said. So he basically kept to his word. Now he could have immediately gone for an election, like most other former presidents would have done, you know, to gain power. But he didn't. He promised that within 100 days, and the 100th program in the 100-day program was to dissolve Parliament on the 23rd of April and go for an election. And if that had happened, by now we would have had a very strong United National Front or maybe a United National Party government, and I would be standing here giving you a thank you speech, and this forum would have taken place 2 months ago. So that's exactly what we did. In the 100 days, no government had delivered what we had delivered. First, to me, the major achievement is to abolish the 18th Amendment. I don't know how many of you know exactly what the 18th Amendment stood for. This was brought in as an emergency bill. Nobody even had an idea or a clue of what was in this bill. It was brought in the morning and it was passed in the evening, and the then President, of course, mustered 46 of our members who had basically gone from the UMP. He brought them over. I am not scared to say that he bought them over, because I know personally some people had confessed to me how much they got to cross over. And he got this amendment passed, which was detrimental to democracy and the country, and also to give him the staying power for the rest of his life. And I'm so glad that in this 100 days, we abolished, or we took away, the 18th Amendment. So this is, to me, even if we hadn't done anything else, just this alone, to me is, I would be very satisfied with it. Also, we brought the drug policy. This policy has been on the ground for quite a while, almost for 2 years, and this is one of the reasons to what made His Excellency the President to take that very firm step to challenge Mahinda Rajapaksa. Because this was his baby. He wanted this brought in because he knew exactly how the drug mafia was ruining this nation and how people were deprived of their basic rights when it came to health, leave alone health, education. You talk about every sector. Women, especially women, were deprived of their basic rights. So the drug policy was brought in. Then there were many other amendments, many other policies that were brought in during the 100 days, and also quick fixes, immediate remedies to some of the people who were going through hardships, like increasing the government servants' salaries by 10,000 rupees. I myself, as a young man, explained did the program with regards to the pregnant mothers. I didn't want to go down that road, but I knew exactly we had an issue on the ground with regards to low birth weight rate, which, if 5 children are born out of 5, 1 would be born underweight, and they are born with a lot of complications, and I wanted to eradicate that. And when we talk about pregnant mothers, in the estate sector, malnutrition among pregnant mothers was 41.6%. 1 in every other pregnant mother is malnourished. So these are not very satisfactory statistics for us to, and for me as a woman, I found it very hard to comprehend situations such as this. When you talk about malnutrition among children, in Kilinochchi, under 5, 50%. In Mondragal is 31%. In the estate sector, stunting in growth, wasting in growth, malnutrition in some districts, stunting is 44%. Wasting is the same, and malnutrition would range from, if it's Badul, it might be 38, if it's Norelia. So these are statistics that we really were not very happy about. So for that reason, we put this into the 100-day program, 20,000 rupees a package, to make sure that pregnant mothers are being taken care of. Now, Mr. Rajapaksa promised this in 2005. This was one of his main manifesto promises. Gabiri Mauranda Poshanamalla. 2010, it came back in the Mahinda Chintanidri that way. It never realized, or it was never given to the pregnant mothers. But I must say it's an achievement for the 100-day government. I found the funds, I found the money. I had people come on board. I had gynecologists, child specialists, nutritionists. I had UNICEF come on board, WHO. We had many sleepless nights in talking, discussing, and trying to formulate a concept. How do we disperse the 20,000? Because I didn't want to give them cash. Some people came, my own colleagues said, Rosy, elections are coming up. Give them 4,000 rupees each, quarterly, and be done with it. And so that I said, no, this is not an election gimmick. To me, I'm sincere and I'm committed towards eradicating low birth weight rate. So for me, it is important to see that every pregnant mother is healthy. So we had many discussions, and we decided that we were going to give them 2,000 rupee nutritional package worth 2,000 rupees for 10 months, starting from the 4th month until up to delivery, and then thereafter, whilst breastfeeding for another 4 months. Apart from doing that, I think the young man mentioned about the $50 million US dollars. The World Bank just granted us $50 million US dollars for ECD, early childhood development, and early childhood education. I think that's been a Because this is an area that has been neglected for many years. 30% of the children who should be in preschools are not in preschools. And I was saddened to hear this, because I think if you're talking about a human being's life, the first 5 years is the most crucial, the formative years of a child, a human being, because 75% of the brain development takes place in the first 5 years. Early childhood development is the key for one to be able to go on and take on the challenges of education. To me, this is very important. It's an important element, important aspect. So for that reason, I was able within the 100 days to have many discussions, flew to New York, convinced the World Bank, and I had hiccups on the ground here with how we're going to disperse, how we're going to utilize the 50 million, what are we going to do, how we're going to create the infrastructure for training institutions, infrastructure to create the preschools for areas where they did not have preschools, how we're going to put the 30% that are not in preschools back into preschools. So, but I fought the good fight, and today the World Bank, together with the Treasury Secretary, is signing the agreement. So this is another, I would say, a positive thing about the 100-day program, which is not in the 100-day program. So we've done quite a bit in the 100 days, and now we are in the race to make sure that we come back into power strongly to deliver. I'm not going to stand here and speak for too long, but I think everybody has a manifesto on your table as well. I would love to open the floor for questions, but just to touch upon women, the deprived sector. If you look at the economy today, number one foreign dollar earner is still the migrant woman worker. Number two is the apparel industry, and then it's the tea or tourism. They keep rotating. Women play a huge role in the economy. I mean, in a multiple role that she plays, I think this is one of the areas where she plays very well. But we brag to the whole world about, when we talk about gender equality and equity, gender indicators with regards to health and education, we top the list in this region, but we do not talk about the grey areas that we are faced with. We have many grey areas when it comes to gender indicators. These two, yes, we top the list, and we think everything is hunky-dory. One thing that we need to realize is, even though we have like a very high literacy rate, and if you look at the higher education institutions, some of these institutions, 70%, 75%, 60% are women, whether it's law faculty, medical college, law college, the science, or except for engineering, all the art faculties, it's always above 50% women. But when it comes to employment and having women in the decision-making realm, we haven't achieved anything. Because if you look at, though I keep bragging about, the women play a greater role in bringing the dollar and the economy, the women are engaged in low-paid, labor-oriented jobs, but they're not recognized. When it comes to, look at the corporate sector. How many women would head organizations as CEOs, chairmen? How many women are on those boards? General managers. Take the public sector. 52% of the public sector are women. But the secretaries to ministers are very few. No, I don't think in the public sector there is more than 10% that are in the key, whether it's in authorities, chairmen of boards, there are very few women even in the public sector who would be in the decision-making realm. Look at the political arena. The local government, 1.2%. Provincial, 5%. National, in the last assembly, 5.8%. It hasn't surpassed 5%. And this is a country when the Women's Franchise Union fought for universal franchise, universal suffrage. We were one of the nations in this entire region that had the privilege of having women, coming to the council. That was in the early 30s, 1931. At that point, we had 5.8% in the council. We're in the 21st century. We brag about having a high literacy rate, and gender indicators with regards to health and education. But where are we today? In a house of 225, we had only 13 members. And even those 13 members, except for two, myself and one other, everyone else was there because they had a tailor-made, ready-made voter base. And that was the reason why parties felt that, they would give them nominations because they already had. One would say that it is the current political system that doesn't, permit women to come into politics, but that's an excuse that they would like to give. Because I've been talking about affirmative action. I've been talking about, bringing in women to have a reservation of seats or a quota for women. And how do we increase female representation? But these debates have been going on for a very long time because we have a very strong women's movement in the country, on the ground, who has been a voice, but this voice hasn't been heard. And we know this voice. That's one thing when it comes to, women in key positions or the decision-making realm. Then look at the violence against women. In a short span of 4 years, I must say the reported cases have been against women 39,604. Against children have been 32,259. And I have been questioning over and over again in Parliament, asking how many of these perpetrators are behind bars? 713. So there was a huge disparity between cases that have been reported, cases that have been heard, and the number of perpetrators being taken to task. So, one had this notion of thinking, okay, does law prevail in this country? And this is something that we need to work on, and we are bringing very strong laws. Our manifesto is very promising for women. This was a much needed piece of legislature, I would say, to bring in the Women's Rights Bill, because it is the United National Party who has, over the last so many years, in the history of Sri Lankan politics, that have always thought about the women. The Women's Bureau was set up by Mr. J.R. Jayawardena, Honorable J.R. Jayawardena. The Women's Ministry was created by His Excellency J.R. Jayawardena again. The Women's Charter was brought into Parliament by His Excellency, former President Ranasinghe Premadasa. The Violence Against Women, the Domestic Violence Bill, was drafted and presented to Parliament during the 2002-2004 United National Party regime. Of course, it was passed in 2005. And now we are ready to bring the Women's Rights Bill and to form a National Women's Council for Women. And this is going to be a winner, because this is where every woman could go with her grievances if there's any disparity. And we have given, under of course, the National Council for Women would be, it will have enough powers to take on every challenge that a woman is faced with. But we also have emphasized on the female-headed households to look into their issues with regards to livelihood programs, security, children, whether it's housing, and some of them have got into debt and they don't know how to come out of the debt. They've been basically penalized, misused by people. So we are going to create an authority to look into all the issues with regards to female-headed houses. One would say that in a post-war situation, Sri Lanka has a huge amount of female-headed houses. 1 in every 3rd household is headed by a woman in this country, especially in the north and the east. So this is an area that we are concentrating on, and we are also concentrating on violence against women. We have promised to pledge, we have pledged to set up courts in every district, to have the attorney's department, to have an office in every district to speed up some of these cases and to make sure that we take the perpetrators to task and justice to prevail. And I would say that this is one area in where we could, by strengthening the law and that before I go and sit here and take on your questions, I also have to mention this. I think we need to look at the attitude and the mindset that we have towards women in this country. Because as I walked in, of course, a very dear friend of mine, I won't even mention his name, he owes me big time because I worked for one of his friends in 1999 during a local government provincial election. He just stood up and shook hands and told me, my wife is voting for you. I said, why not you? I heard this wherever I go. I hear the gentleman telling me, our women are voting for you. My wife is voting for you. Believe me, I can take on any challenge. I can even be the defense minister in this country if I want to. And any challenge that, or any task that the United National Party has bestowed upon me, whether it's being the head of the women's wing, whether sending me to Malaysia as the High Commissioner, I have proved to be worthy enough where there, I'm not trying to praise myself and blow my own trumpet, but a lot of you know I've left a mark, and today the people who are manning the mission in Malaysia says, wherever you go they talk about Rosy. So I just don't understand, why is it that the men don't see women worthy enough to take on challenges or to be in positions? Is this what it is? Why, even though, like I said, I keep reiterating this, where when it comes to indicators as education, we are in par. We have achieved, beyond everybody's expectations. We are equal, or we are even above our male counterparts. But when it comes to holding positions or office, women are not good enough. So leaving that thought in your minds, let's stand together to change the mindsets and the attitudes of this nation, to give equal opportunity to all women and enable women to live in dignity with equal power. I think looking at equality, power sharing and dignity for women is the key and the success of a nation. If we are to move forward as a nation, this is a thought that we all have to put into our heads. Let me go and sit there. The floor is open for questions. I know all of you have to get back to work, so thank you very much once again for coming and being with us. I need to thank this one lady who thought that I was worthy enough to run for elections, and she's Damayanti Piyasoma, the former minister. Upali Piyasoma, the minister himself, is here. Former cabinet minister, Upali Piyasoma's wife. Damayanti is the one who put this whole thing together. She sponsored this. She was very keen. She's there day in, day out in my office supporting me. She even cooks food from her own home to come and give my supporters. Thank you, Damayanti. I really do appreciate this. I wish there were a few men like you who would think Rosy is worthy enough. Let's go support her, sponsor her. We need a few women like this. Believe me, if you give a woman a chance, and we have very strong women. In this room, I see quite a number of strong women who should be sitting in that chamber in Parliament, which is the most supreme institution, which makes decisions with regards to your children, this nation. And they would do a pretty good job, a much better job than half my colleagues who were in Parliament in the last assembly.